I inhaled deeply as I tried to get rid of the fatigue from yet another demanding work week, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee filled my tiny apartment. My sister's name, Sophie, flashed on my phone as it buzzed on the counter, anticipating one of her typical calls that went something like, "Mom wants to know," or "Can you help me with?" Her voice was exceptionally sweet instead. Too sweet. "Oh, you were unaware of the Bahamas trip?" Fake concern was evident in Sophie's voice. I scowled and tightened my hold on my coffee mug. "What excursion to the Bahamas? Oh no. Did Mom not tell you?" She laughed a little, as if there had been some amusing miscommunication. "Yes, Mom, Dad, Ryan, and I are all leaving. Next month." Ryan is her partner. "But hey, Mom said she was going to ask you for a favor," she said after pausing. "Since you are the only one who is not going." You know, my fingers clenched around the cup as I took a deep swallow. "I assume you want me to watch the dogs? Good luck," Sophie chirped, as though there was cause for excitement. "Max needs his medication twice a day, and Rocky experiences anxiety at the kennel. Mom has already informed the kennel that we won't need them." "You're okay with that then?" The only one who isn't going. Not because I was unable to, since I wasn't asked. My mind was filled with recollections as I stood there, allowing her words to sink in, the quiet murmurs during family meals that abruptly ceased when I entered. I immediately understood why Mom had inquired casually about my job schedule. Dad's sudden, out-of-character curiosity about my dating life surprised me. This whole journey had been organized behind my back. They hadn't even made an effort to conceal it. I tried to keep my voice steady. "No, Sophie, the Bahamas has not been discussed with Mom, or about watching pets." "Oh," her voice briefly lost its phony honey before swiftly regaining it. "Well, you're not very busy, are you?" Something inside of me snapped. It was later that night that Mom finally called. "I've been meaning to speak with you, honey. We require a favor." I knew exactly what she was going to say, so I leaned against my kitchen counter. "I'll venture a guess. Do you need me to watch the dogs while you're all in the Bahamas?" Silence for a beat. Then she sighed a little. "Sarah told you, I see. Well, dear, it would be really beneficial. Max, you know, Rocky gets nervous at the kennel." She kept making excuses and never once acknowledged the true problem. So I ignored her. "No flimsy wish you could come too at all. We didn't think you'd be interested isn't even a lie, nothing. Only conjecture. There were assumptions that I couldn't be anywhere else. They assumed that I was only their fallback option and had no other life." I waited for her to finish before answering in a forceful but quiet voice. "I'll give it some thought." I hung up after that and got my laptop open. In front of me, I gazed at the travel website. I had saved up 3 weeks of vacation time. They simply believed that since I had nowhere fascinating to go, I never took time off. I had been operating a travel blog for the previous 2 years, but they were unaware of it. They were unaware of the locations I had fantasized about seeing. As luck would have it, flights to Greece's Santorini were on sale, a destination I'd wanted to see since my photography class in college. The dates? The location is ideal for their trip to the Bahamas. I moved my cursor over the Book Now button. My phone then began to buzz. Sophie's message. "Sophie, you're acting strangely by keeping an eye on the pets," Mom said. "Come on, you don't really have any vacation days saved up. What would you do with time off anyway? You never have fun anywhere." With a sharpening of my disbelief, I gazed at the writing. Anger. Years of being ignored. The contingency plan was always the last item on the list. It serves as a backup plan for emergencies. The accountable one. Not anymore. With a firm decision, I let out a breath. Then, with a serenity I couldn't quite place, I made the Book Now click. My phone was overflowing with texts the following morning. "Mom, Lisa, I don't understand why you're being so difficult. It's just a small favor. We're family. Sophie, come on, just say yes already. It's not like you have plans. Dad, Princess, you know how Rocky gets at the kennel. Can't you just help out this one time, just once? Just once? Just once?" I had prioritized their demands over my own for years. And I was the self-centered one now that I was at last making my own decision. I didn't pay attention to their messages. I would tell them face to face. It had always been customary for my parents to host Sunday dinners. This time, though, I wasn't just the submissive daughter seated in silence at the table. They wouldn't appreciate the choice I was bringing in. I could sense the tension as soon as I entered. In the kitchen, my mother began slicing vegetables with a bit too much vigor, flipping through the newspaper but not actually reading it. My dad sat in his normal recliner. Sophie, too. In the dining room, Sophie was already waiting for me with her arms folded. Let's get started. Calmly, I sat down to eat some salad. Then I dropped the bomb as casually as I could. I have other arrangements for those dates. A sudden quiet. My mother's fork then clanked on her plate. An alternative plan? What do you mean? Is there anything more significant than supporting your family? As they all gaped at me in shock, I took a sip of water. I then took out my phone and set it down on the table. What's displayed on the screen? I verified my itinerary. I am traveling to Greece. Sophie started giggling. You? Visiting Greece? No, you're kidding. I smiled slightly and leaned back. I'm not, in fact. Visit Santorini for 8 days. Paid for and reserved. Mom's face turned white. Dad frowned and put down his newspaper. Sophie appeared irate. But, you can't. My mother stumbled. How about the canines? The kennel is completely reserved. I gave a shrug. It sounds like you didn't plan well. Sophie rolled her eyes. Lisa, my God. All you're doing is being spiteful. I turned to her and spoke in a forceful yet calm tone. No, Sophie. I'm choosing myself for once, which is why I'm doing this. She laughed. Really? You never take any trips. In Greece. What are you even going to do? Read while you're in your hotel room? I lifted my phone once more and arched an eyebrow. I swiped a couple of times to bring up my vacation blog. I've been traveling for years, actually. And putting it in writing. I looked at them on the screen. Leaning forward, my dad adjusted his glasses. Sophie's expression contorted in bewilderment. What about my mother? All she did was blink at the screen. You visited Montreal? Paris too? When? The previous year, as well as the year prior. And last year, I put my phone down. Whenever possible, I go small distances. I write about them. People heed my advice. Sophie took hold of my phone and began to browse. Her arrogant face turned into something unintelligible. She whispered, You have more than 20,000 followers. My father cleared his throat. These photographs are of a professional caliber. Why didn't you tell us, Lisa? I gave a sour smile. I did. It was 3 Thanksgivings ago. You brought up Sophie's recent yoga certification instead. Quiet, uncomfortable, heavy silence. They weren't just staring at me for the first time. In fact, they were observing me. That's it, then? Mom's voice was piercing. Are you simply ignoring your obligations? Giving us no other choice? I let out a sigh. Mom, I'm not leaving anyone behind. I discovered a solution. I took out a printed copy of the email and gave it to her. Her eyes narrowed as she scanned it. What is this? I folded my arms. That's a message from my neighbor, Mrs. Chen. She adores canines. She's retiring. She also consented to pay to watch Rocky and Max. Mom's jaw dropped, closed. Then, however, why didn't you inform us earlier? I grinned. Because I wanted you to experience the feeling of having your plans interrupted by someone who doesn't care about your feelings. A long silence. Then, don't you think that's a little petty? I looked her in the eye. No, Mother. That is quite human. I knew what was going to happen next by the time I left dinner. And I was correct. Mom started a full-fledged campaign of guilt. Aunt Carol called to criticize my selfish behavior. Rachel, my cousin, wrote lengthy texts about family loyalty. My grandma also voiced her opinion, but she mainly appeared perplexed as to why I couldn't simply watch the dogs from Greece. Sophie arrived at my apartment in a rage. This is just your way of punishing us. Lisa, this isn't you. You've always been the one in charge. You may force Mom and Dad to postpone their vacation. I gave a shrug. That seems like a problem with them. Sophie's mouth fell open. When did you become so chilly? I let out a slow breath. I'm not chilly. I've had enough of being the doormat for the family. I gave it to her after bringing up my travel blog on my phone. Her look changed from irritation to something else as she scrolled. Remorse, perhaps. Next, in a tiny voice, these pictures are excellent. When did you start taking pictures? I grinned. That was 3 years ago. Nobody seemed to notice. To that, she had no answer. Sophie was stunned for the first time. The argument over family dinner was over. But the true impact was only getting started. My phone was vibrating constantly when I got up the following morning. Missed phone calls, text messages, voicemails. Mom was in full-blown guilt trip mode. Mom, Lisa, we need to talk. This isn't like you. Are you really willing to ruin our trip over something so small? Sophie, Mom's upset. Fix this. You're being dramatic. Dad, Princess, I think you should reconsider. Your mother is having a challenging time with this. I rubbed my temples and moaned. I wasn't watching the dogs, so they weren't upset. They were upset because I wasn't fulfilling my position for the first time in my life. Reliable Lisa's role, the contingency plan, the one who never refused. And I had now? They were unsure of how to respond to it. I was about to begin packing for Greece that afternoon when I heard someone knock on my door. I recognized the person already. I inhaled deeply before opening it. Mom was standing there with a heavy photo album. May I enter? Softly, she inquired. I moved out of the way. She sat on my couch and gently placed the album on the coffee table, flipping through its pages. All of the pictures showed me caring for animals over the years. I bottle-fed a stray kitten when I was 10 years old. When Sophie was at a party, I was 15 years old and walking her dog. While everyone else went on a family vacation, I stayed at home at the age of 19 to monitor the pets. With a soft yet demanding tone, she remarked, Lisa, you've always been so good with animals. It has always been a component of your identity. You have never before minded. I shook my head and laughed a little. Mom, that is untrue. Yes, I did mind. I simply couldn't say that. For the first time in a long time, she gave me a serious glance at that moment. I noticed bewilderment, opposition, perhaps even some remorse. She then closed the album with a sigh. Well, I hope you're happy. She let out a loud sigh. We have to cancel the Bahamas excursion. No one else can keep the dogs for that long since the kennel is filled. I didn't respond right away. I grabbed my laptop, opened my email, and then I turned the screen to her. It was a message from my retired neighbor, Miss S. Chen, letting me know that she would be happy to look after Rocky and Max for a price. I have a solution for you, I remarked coolly. She lives 2 stories down and is a dog lover. For the amount you would have paid the kennel, she is glad to do it. Mom gazed at the display. Her jaw dropped, closed after that. Then, however, why didn't you inform us earlier? I grinned. Because I wanted you to know what it's like when someone ruins your well-thought-out plans without taking your feelings into account. A long silence. Then, don't you think that's a little petty? Unflinching, I looked her in the eye. No, Mother, that is quite human. My family had experienced each of the 5 phases of grieving by the time my trip to Greece was just 2 days away. 1. Denial. Take it seriously, Lisa. You won't actually travel to Greece. 2. Anger. Everything is being ruined by you. 3. We'll pay you to watch the dogs as a bargain. Set your own pricing. 4. Depression. Mom is wretched. I hope you're content. 5. Acknowledgement, sort of. The biggest surprise was when Dad unexpectedly stopped by. A new camera lens, the very one I had been saving for, was awkwardly held out by him. He shifted uneasily and continued, Your sister showed me your blog. I see that you indicated that you wanted this for photos taken in low light. I thought it could be useful in Greece. Stunned, I gazed at him. He had never before recognized my passion till now. There was a part of me that wanted to tell him that it was too little, too late. But then I noticed. Sincere effort. Instead, I carefully took the lens. Thank you, Dad. He cleared his throat. Would you mind showing me a few of the shots you intend to take? I blinked. I then accessed my Santorini picture inspiration Pinterest board, and my dad sat next to me and listened for the first time in my life. He stood up to go, but paused at the door. Then, he said, I canceled my portion of the Bahamas trip. I scowled. What? Why? He exhaled deeply. Sophie and your mother are still together. However, someone needs to stay behind and closely monitor the dogs. Miss S. Chen may require assistance. I arched an eyebrow. You didn't have to do that, Dad. He smiled slightly at me. I understand. However, I desire to. In addition, when you upload those pictures of Greece, I want to see them. Perhaps you could show me how to leave comments on blogs. I saw not only my father, but also a man attempting to reestablish a relationship with his daughter for the first time in ages. For the first time, I gave in to him. My phone rang with unexpected texts the morning before my travel. Sophie, have a wonderful trip, sis. Your pictures better be amazing. Mom, although she still missed the point completely, at least she had stopped guilt tripping me. Here's the security code to check on the house while we're away. However, the one that made me cry, Dad just posted my first blog comment. Hope I did it right. Make sure to take care of yourself in Greece, not just your camera. Love, Dad. Before turning my attention to the boarding card in my hands, I gazed at the message. Greece wasn't the only destination on this tour. It has to do with freedom. It was about letting go of the role my family had given me at last, and my heart felt lighter than it has in years when I stepped into the aircraft. I stared out the window, watching the deep blue Aegean Sea stretch endlessly below, while the airplane hummed softly beneath me. Santorini. It had been only a dream for years. I had always kept this location in the back of my mind, telling myself that eventually it would be a place I liked in pictures. Now, however, the day had come. I sensed a change within me as the plane descended. I was doing something completely for myself for the first time in my life. No commitments. Have no expectations. No contingency plan. It's just me, my camera, and the uncharted globe. A pleasant breeze and the aroma of salt filled the air as soon as I stepped off the plane. Everything was just as I had imagined: the blue domes, the whitewashed buildings, and the winding cobblestone streets. But in actual life, it's somehow much more wonderful. The cliffside village of Oya, where the streets bent like something from a fable, was my first destination. As I strolled around, I saw the tiny bakeries, the vibrant flowers that spilled over balconies, and how the sun illuminated everything with a golden glow. I raised my camera and took a picture. Then another, and yet another. I felt like I was taking back a piece of myself with every click. My phone was buzzing with notifications later that night as I sat at a cafe on the cliff seeing the sunset. I had uploaded several pictures from my first day in Greece, anticipating the typical feedback from my readers of my travel blog. However, I hadn't anticipated my family. Dad! Incredible shot, princess. The lighting is perfect. I see what you meant about golden hour. Sophie, okay. I take back what I said. These are actually amazing. Do you edit these, or is Greece just that pretty? My mother had even posted a comment. Mom, the buildings are so white. I hope you're wearing sunscreen. It wasn't really an expression of regret. However, it was something. After staring at my phone for a while, I typed a brief response. Thanks, Dad. Greece is even more beautiful in person. I then grinned and switched off my phone. I wasn't waiting for their approval for the first time in my life, and that was the most significant shift of all. The days that followed were filled with adventure. I walked to the summit of Skaros Rock, where I could see the entire island while the wind whipped my hair. The owner of a small family-run taverna recommended that I eat their homemade baklava after I sampled some fresh seafood. In order to let the mineral-rich waters wash away years of tension, I boarded a boat to the volcanic hot springs. Through late-night beers under the moonlight, I bonded with other lone travelers, and we laughed together. Every event and every moment seemed like a life I had been longing for. One afternoon, I set up my tripod to take a self-portrait while exploring a secret beach. I have taken innumerable pictures of other individuals for years, of locations, of scenery, never of myself though. With the sun catching in my hair and the waves behind me, I stepped into the frame after setting the timer. And as soon as I saw the picture, the figure peering back was so unfamiliar to me. She appeared content. She appeared unrestrained. She seems to have finally entered her own narrative. My phone rang as I was enjoying a glass of wine on the balcony of my hotel on the second to last night I was in Greece. Mom was there. I was hesitant to respond. Hello, Mom. She let out a sigh. While you've been away, I've been thinking a lot, and I know I should have called earlier. I remained silent as I waited. Your dad told me that, in order to babysit the dogs, he had to cancel his portion of the Bahamas trip. At first, I was indignant. However, it seemed weird while I was sitting by myself at the resort. She lowered her voice. I came to a realization, Lisa. We always thought you didn't require our assistance. We believed that you could manage on your own. However, perhaps that was merely a pretext for not paying attention. The lump in my throat was swallowed. The way we handled you wasn't fair. The way we assumed you were normal. My mother was acknowledging her mistake for the first time in my life, and I wasn't desperate to hear it for the first time, because I had already discovered my own peace, whether she acknowledged it or not. I took one more stroll through the peaceful streets of Santorini on the morning before my flight home. I inhaled the clean sea air. I allowed my skin to warm in the sun. I also made a secret vow to myself: I have more adventures to come. My phone buzzed one last time as I got on the plane. Dad was there. Safe flight, princess. Can't wait to see your photos. I tucked my phone away with a smile. I was returning home a different person than when I had gone, for the first time in years. As someone who had at last made her own decision, I was returning home, and I was certain that this was just the start. A gentle ping announced our arrival as the plane's wheels touched down on the runway. At home. However, I wasn't sure if home felt the same anymore for the first time in my life. Santorini transformed me. I had entered a new world where I was more than just a sister, a daughter, or a fallback option. My name was Lisa, a tourist, a photographer, a narrator, and I was convinced of one thing as I picked up my bags and got off the aircraft. I refused to shrink back into the person they had always thought I should be. My phone buzzed just as I was entering my front door. Dad, welcome home, princess. Let me know when you have time to show me the pictures. I grinned. That was novel. Then, practically at once, Sophie, Mom is freaking out because she realized you haven't posted any photos of the family on your blog before. She's worried people will think we're awful. I laughed. A few things remained constant. However, then also, I kind of want to show you something. Can I come over later? I was surprised by that portion. I was editing pictures at my kitchen table that night when someone knocked. Sophie was there when I opened the door. Her typical I have my life perfectly together attitude wasn't present. There was no fancy dress involved, no prepared demeanor. She simply appeared unsure. She said, "Hey," and entered. I arched an eyebrow. When did you start dropping by without warning? She sat down and laughed nervously, after realizing that I might have been a bit of a jerk. Curious, I sat across from her. She took out her phone and looked at me on the screen. Her Instagram was the source. Her most recent post? A sunset in the Bahamas, hazy. The caption? I am trying to see things through my sister's photographer's eyes. Not as good as yours, but I'm learning to look deeper. I was utterly stunned as I looked at her. She gave a shrug. Since your departure, I've been reflecting deeply. You know, how I always thought you were simply. However, I realized I never really noticed you until seeing how many people care about what you do and how many people read your site. I just got what I was looking for from you. I couldn't think of anything to say. Sophie had never once acknowledged that she was mistaken. Never. She was finally seeing me, though, as she sat in my flat. And for the first time, we weren't merely obligated sisters. In fact, we were becoming acquainted. Mom asked me to join her for dinner a few days later. I nearly skipped it. I kind of thought it would be another guilt trap. However, I discovered something had changed when I got there. I didn't receive passive-aggressive remarks about how I should have stayed at home to baby. Sit the dogs for the first time in a long time. Mom took out a printed sheet of paper instead and gave it to me. I blinked. What is this? She appeared almost bashful. I printed off a few of your finest vacation pictures. I had them framed. I turned the stack over. The pictures I had taken in Greece had been framed and were now prepared for wall hanging. Mom cleared her throat. I thought I should probably start with something my daughter genuinely cares about if I'm going to boast about her. I chuckled and shook my head. Is this how you express your regret? She grinned. This is how I try. And that was sufficient somehow. I didn't feel alienated from my own family for the first time when Thanksgiving rolled around. I was completely stunned by what Mom had done. She had used my framed travel photos to decorate the house, not on a table by itself, prominently displayed in the living room. Some relatives even made remarks about them. Lisa, I didn't realize you were so gifted. Then, the most unexpected of all, at supper, Dad got up and cleared his throat. He turned to face me and said, "We have an announcement. We are organizing another family vacation." I stiffened, anticipating their next expectation that I would remain behind. Sophie, however, smiled. "And you get to assist with the planning." I blinked. "What?" Wait a minute. Mom gave a nod. We thought maybe you could work your magic on our next vacation because your blog followers loved your content about Greece so much. On the table, Dad set a folder. I've been looking at Italian photography tours. Instead of merely taking selfies and puppy photographs, I thought you would be able to teach us a few tips on how to take truly good pictures. Mom grinned. In addition, I've already instructed Miss S. Chen to keep an eye on the dogs. Months in the past. Just to be certain, I gazed at them. My folks, Sophie. The same folks who had thoughtlessly excluded me from the Bahamas excursion. The same individuals who believed I had no life apart from theirs. And now, they wanted me to take them to a different location. On my terms, somewhere. With a slight smile on my lips, I let out a slow exhale. I answered, Italy sounds ideal, and took out my phone to show them some suggestions. But I'm in charge of the itinerary this time. Dad smiled. There is no other way I would have it. My family thought of me as just reliable Lisa months ago. The practical one was chosen. The contingency plan. However, they had begun to recognize me for who I truly was after I made the decision to be myself after I took charge of my life, rather than waiting for them to notice me. I am more than just a daughter, not merely a sister, but a woman with her own tale. And while I sat there planning our next excursion, I became aware of I was no longer only a character in their tale. At last, I was penning my own. This is not merely a tale of familial relationships. It is a tale of self-discovery. It's about living the life that is truly yours and letting go of the role that other people expect you to play. In the end, living your truth and allowing others to catch up can sometimes bring about the biggest change rather than demanding it.